Chapter 11. On Saturday afternoon, Quillerin took Alicoque Wright to the ballpark and listened to her views on baseball. "Of course," she said, "the game's basic appeal is erotic. All that symbolism, and those sensual movements." She was wearing something she had made from a bedspread. "Mrs. Mitty custom ordered it for a king-size bed," she explained, "and it was delivered in queen size, so I converted it into a costume suit." Her converted bedspread was green corduroy, with an irregular plush pile like rows of marching caterpillars. "Very tasteful," Quillerin remarked. Cokie tossed her cascade of hair. "It wasn't intended to be tasteful. It was intended to be sexy." After dinner at a chop house, Cokie had a crab leg and some stewed plums. Quillerin had the works. The newsman said, "We're invited to a party tonight, and I'm going to do something rash. I'm taking you to meet a young man who is apparently irresistible to women of all ages, sizes, and shapes." "Don't worry," said Cokie, giving his hand a blithe squeeze. "I prefer older men." "I'm not that much older." "But you're so mature. That's important to a person like me." They rode to the villa veranda in a taxi, holding hands. At the building entrance, they were greeted with enthusiasm by the doorman, whom Quillerin had foresightedly tipped that afternoon. It was not a large tip by villa veranda standards, but it commanded $1's worth of attention from a man dressed like a 19th century Prussian general. They walked into the lofty lobby, all white marble, plate glass, and stainless steel, and Cokie nodded approval. She had become suddenly quiet. As they ascended in the automatic elevator, Quillerin gave her a quick, private hug. The door to David's apartment was opened by a white-coated Oriental, and there was a flash of recognition when he saw Quillerin. No one ever forgot the newsman's mustache. Then the host surged forward, radiating charm, and Cokie slipped her hand through Quillerin's arm. He felt her grip tighten when Lyke acknowledged the introduction with his rumbling voice and drooping eyelids. The apartment was filled with guests, clients of David's chattering about their analysts, and fellow decorators discussing the Spanish exhibition at the museum and the new restaurant in Greektown. "There's a simply marvelous 17th century Isabelina Vargueño in the show." "The restaurant will remind you of that little place in Athens near the Acropolis. You know the one?" Quillerin led Cokie to the buffet. "When I'm with decorators," he said, "I feel I'm in a never-never land. They never discuss anything serious or unpleasant." "Decorators have only 2 worries, discontinued patterns and slow deliveries," Cokie said. "They have no real problems." There was scorn in the curl of her lips. "Such disapproval can't be purely professional. I suspect you were jilted by a decorator once. Or twice." She smoothed her long, straight hair self-consciously. "Try these little crab meat things. They've got lots of pepper in them." Although Quillerin had dined recently and well, he had no difficulty in trying the lobster salad, the crusty brown potato balls flavored with garlic, the strips of ginger-spiced beef skewered on slivers of bamboo, and the hot buttered cornbread filled with ham. He had a feeling of well-being. He looked at Cokie with satisfaction. He liked her spirit, and the provocative face peeking out from the curtain of hair, and the coltish grace of her figure. Then he glanced over her shoulder toward the living room, and suddenly Cokie looked plain. Natalie Neughton had arrived. Harry Neughton's ex-wife was plump in all areas, except for an incongruously small waist and tiny ankles. Her face was pretty, like a peach, and she had peach-colored hair ballooning about her head. One of the decorators said, "How did you like the Wild West, Natalie?" "I didn't pay any attention to it," she replied in a small, shrill voice. "I just stayed in a boarding house in Reno and worked on my rug. I made one of those shaggy Danish rugs with a needle. Does anybody want to buy a handmade rug in cocoa and celery green?" "You put on weight, Natalie." "Ooh, have I ever? All I did was work on my rug and eat peanut butter. I love crunchy peanut butter." Natalie was wearing a dress that matched her hair, a sheath of loosely woven wool with golden glints. A matching stole with long, crinkly fringe was draped over her shoulders. Koki, who was giving Natalie an oblique inspection, said to Quillerin, "That fabric must be something she loomed herself, in between peanut butter sandwiches. It would have been smarter without the metallic threads." "What would an architect call that color?" he asked. "I'd call it a yellow-pink of low saturation and medium brilliance." "A decorator would call it cream of carrot," he said, "or sweet potato souffle." After Natalie had been welcomed and teased and flattered and congratulated by those who knew her, David Lyke brought her to meet Quillerin and Koki. He told her, "The Daily Fluxion might want to photograph your house in the hills. What do you think?" "Do you want it photographed, David?" "It's your house, darling. You decide." Natalie said to Quillerin, "I'm moving out as soon as I find a studio, and then my ex-husband, is going to sell the house." "I hear it's really something," said the newsman. "It's super, simply super. David has oodles of talent." She looked at the decorator adoringly. Lyke explained, "I corrected some of the architect's mistakes and changed the window detail so we could hang draperies. Natalie wove the draperies herself. They're a work of art." "Well, look, honey," said Natalie. "If it will do you any good, let's put the house in the paper." "Suppose we let Mr. Quillerin have a look at it." "All right," she said. "How about Monday morning? I have a hair appointment in the afternoon." Quillerin said, "Do you have your looms at the house?" "Oh, yes. I have 2 great big looms and a small one. I'm crazy about weaving. David, honey, show them that sports coat I did for you." Lyke hesitated for the flicker of an eyelid. "Darling, it's at the cleaner," he said. Later, he remarked to Quillerin, "I used some of her yardage out of friendship, but her work leaves a lot to be desired. She's just an amateur with no taste and no talent, so don't emphasize the hand weaving if you publish the house." The evening followed the usual Lyke pattern. A splendid buffet, drinks in abundance, music for dancing played a trifle too loud, and 10 conversations in progress simultaneously. It had all the elements of a good party, but Quillerin found himself feeling troubled at David Lyke's last remark. At his first opportunity, he asked Natalie to dance, and said, "I hear you're going into the weaving business on the professional level." "Yes, I'm going to do custom work for decorators," she said in her high-pitched voice that sounded vulnerable and pathetic. "David loves my weaving. He says he'll get me a lot of commissions." She was an ample armful, and the glittering wool dress she wore was delectably soft, except for streaks of scratchiness where the fabric was shot with gold threads. As they danced, she went on chattering, and Quillerin's mind wandered. If this woman was banking her career on David's endorsement, she was in for a surprise. Natalie said she was hunting for a studio, and she had a cousin who was a newspaper man, and she loved smoked oysters, and the balconies at the villa veranda were too windy. Quillerin said he had just moved into an apartment there, but refrained from mentioning whose. He speculated on the chances of sneaking a few tidbits from the buffet for his cat. "Ooh, do you have a cat?" Natalie squealed. "Does he like lobster?" "He likes anything that's expensive. I think he reads price tags." "Why don't you go and get him? We'll give him some lobster." Quillerin doubted whether Coco would like the noisy crowd, but he liked to show off his handsome pet, and he went to get him. The cat was half asleep on his refrigerator cushion, and he was the picture of relaxation, sprawled on his back in a position of utter abandon, with one foreleg flung out in space and the other curled around his ears. He looked at Quillerin upside down, with half an inch of pink tongue protruding and an insane gleam in his slanted, half-closed eyes. "Get up," said Quillerin, "and quit looking like an idiot. You're going to a soiree." By the time Coco arrived at the party, sitting on Quillerin's shoulder, he had regained his dignity. At his entrance, the noise swelled to a crescendo, and then stopped altogether. Coco surveyed the scene with regal condescension, like a potentate honoring his subjects with his presence. He blinked not, neither did he move a whisker. His brown points were so artistically contrasted with his light body, his fur was shaded so subtly, and his sapphire eyes had such unadorned elegance, that he made David Lyke's guests look gaudily overdressed. Then the first exclamation broke through the silence, and everyone came forward to stroke the silky fur. "Why, it feels like ermine! I'm going to throw out my mink." Coco tolerated the attention, but remained aloof until Natalie spoke to him. He stretched his neck and sniffed her extended finger. "Ooh, can I hold him?" she asked, and to Quillerin's surprise, Coco went gladly into her arms, snuggling in her woolly stole, sniffing it with serious concentration and purring audibly. Cokie pulled Quillerin away. "It makes me so mad," she said, "when I think of all the trouble I take to stay thin and get my hair straightened and improve my conversation. Then she comes in, babbling and looking frizzy and 30 pounds overweight, and everybody goes for her, including the cat." Quillerin experienced a pang of sympathy for Cokie, mixed with something else. "I shouldn't leave Coco here too long among all these strangers," he said. "It might upset his stomach. Let's take him back to 15F and you can have a look at my apartment." "I've brought my nutmeg grater," she said. "Do you happen to have any cream and ginger ale?" Quillerin retrieved Coco from Natalie's stole and led Cokie around the long, curving corridor to the other wing. When he threw open the door of his apartment, Cokie paused for one breathless moment on the threshold, and then ran into the living room with her arms flung wide. "It's glorious!" she cried. "Harry Norton calls it Scandinavian. The green chair is Danish, and so is the endwood floor," Cokie told him, "and the dining chairs are Finnish. But the whole apartment is like a designer's hall of fame. Bertoya, Wegner, Alto, Mies, Nakashima. It's too magnificent. I can't bear it." She collapsed in the cushions of a suede sofa and put her face in her hands. Quillerin brought champagne glasses filled with a creamy liquid, and suddenly and solemnly, Cokie ground the nutmeg on the bubbling surface. "To Cokie, my favorite girl," he said, lifting his glass. "Skinny, straight-haired, and articulate." "Now I feel better," she said, and she kicked off her shoes and wiggled her toes in the shaggy pile of the rug. Quillerin lighted his pipe and showed her the new issue of Gracious Abodes, with the Allison living room on the cover. They discussed its challenging shades of red and pink, the buxom ship's figurehead, and the pros and cons of four-poster beds with side curtains. Coco was sitting on the coffee table with his back turned, pointedly ignoring the conversation. The curve of his tail, with its uplifted tip, was the essence of disdain, but the angle of his ears indicated that he was secretly listening. "Hello, Coco," said the girl. "Don't you like me?" The cat made no move. There was not even the tremor of a whisker. "I used to have a beautiful orange cat named Frankie," she told Quillerin sadly. I still carry his picture in my handbag. She extracted a wad of cards and snapshots from her wallet and sorted them on the seat of the sofa, then proudly held up a picture of a fuzzy orange blob. It's out of focus and the color has faded, but it's all I have left of Frankie. He lived to be 15 years old. His parentage was uncertain, but Coco! Shouted Quillerin. Get away! The cat had silently crept up on the sofa, and he was manipulating his long pink tongue. Quillerin said he was licking that picture. Oh! Said Koki, and she snatched up a small glossy photograph of a man. She slipped it into her wallet, but not before Quillerin had caught a glimpse of it. He frowned his displeasure as she went on talking about cats and grinding nutmeg into their cocktails. Now, tell me about your mustache, Koki said. I suppose you know it's terribly glamorous. I raised this crop in Britain during the war, said Quillerin, as camouflage. I like it. It pleased him that she had not said, which war, as young women were inclined to do. He said, to tell the truth, I'm afraid to shave it off. I have a strange feeling that these lip whiskers put me in touch with certain things, like subsurface truths and imminent happenings. How wonderful, said Koki, just like cat's whiskers. I don't usually confide this little fact. I wouldn't want it to get around. I can see your point. Lately, I've been getting hunches about the theft of the Tate jades. Haven't they found the boy yet? You mean the houseboy who allegedly stole the stuff? That's one of my hunches. I don't think he's the thief. Koki's eyes widened. Do you have any evidence? Quillerin frowned. That's the trouble. I don't have a thing but these blasted hunches. The houseboy doesn't fit the role. And there's something fishy about the timing. And I have certain reservations about G. Vernon Tate. Did you ever hear anything about a scandal in the Tate family? Koki shook her head. Of course, you were too young when it happened. Koki looked at her watch. It's getting late. I should be going home. One more drink? Quillerin suggested. He went to the bar with its vast liquor supply and took the cream and ginger ale from the compact refrigerator. Koki began walking around the room and admiring it from every angle. Everywhere you look, there's beautiful line and composition, she said with a rapture in her face. And I love the interplay of textures, velvety, sleek, woolly, shaggy, and this rug. I worship this rug. She threw herself down on the tumbled pile of the luxurious rug. She lay there in ecstasy with arms flung wide, and Quillerin combed his mustache violently. She lay there, unaware that the cat was stalking her, with his tail curled down like a fishhook and his body slung low. Coco moved through the shaggy pile of the rug like a wild thing prowling through the underbrush. Then he sprang. Koki shrieked and sat up. He bit me! He bit my head! Quillerin rushed to her side. Did he hurt you? Koki ran her fingers through her hair. No, he didn't actually bite me. He just tried to take a little nip. But he seemed so hostile. Quill, why would Coco do a thing like that?